It's time for the Savvy Realtor Podcast. I'm Walter Storholt alongside Angie Cole, the owner and broker in charge of A. Cole Realty, serving you throughout the Triangle, teaching you about the ins and outs when it comes to buying or selling a home. You can find the team online by going to acolerealty.com. That's A-C-O-L-E realty.com, or by calling 919-578-3128. That's 919-578-3128. And now it's time for one of the top realtors in the Triangle, Angie Cole, and the Savvy Realtor Podcast. Angie, millennials are predicted to be responsible for more than half of all home purchases in the next year. So I think it's important to know which of their desires will help drive the market. But are preconceived notions about millennial desires indeed myths and not actually fact? And what do millennials really want? That's what I want to pose to you, because you've got boots on the ground experience to kind of give us some good knowledge here, Angie, because we make these kind of assumptions about different age groups and whatnot, and sometimes they aren't right. And I have a feeling that some of these myths might not actually be reality. One myth definitely goes that millennials want the cool place. You know, they want hip downtown apartments, and they're not into the suburbs and not into single-family homes. What's been your experience with what millennials really want in that regard?
I would say that's 100% a myth. You know, we have some millennials that's their desire. They want to be in the mix. They want to be close to, restaurants, that downtown lifestyle. But I'm really finding a lot of millennials who are thinking about the next steps. Maybe they are recently engaged. Maybe they've been married. Maybe they're just having their first child. And so I feel like most millennials that we're working with are looking more for long term, how they can grow into a home, having that backyard. So I would say that the majority of the millennials that we're working with, they actually are going more the route of the single family home lifestyle. And I think it's important to note too that, millennials, we've been talking about this word millennial for quite some time, but millennials are no longer the 21-year-olds, right?
That's true. Yeah.
I'm a millennial, and I don't want to tell my age, but I'm 35 and a half. So, so I'm not trying to be downtown, going to the clubs late night. I would prefer to be in a single family home, where there's other neighbors with other children surrounding, maybe having the amenities with a clubhouse and a pool. So I feel like that scope of things have definitely changed for millennials.
We don't have to open the Pandora's box conversation of the full breadth and width of misinterpretations of millennials. But it is funny when a teenager, I've seen it multiple times when a teenager's in the news or a teenager does something, and even my folks have done this where they go like, millennials,
and
right? My folks will look at me and be like, you're millennial generation. I'm like, there are not millennials, current teenagers. That's a whole different group. Blame them.
Right. They're younger than us. We're getting old now. Millennials we're aging.
Our bones are starting to ache,
Yeah, right, exactly. But, going back to, millennials being responsible for, more than half of the home purchases in 2020, I 100% agree with that. I'm seeing that, individuals are purchasing homes at a younger age, which is amazing, right? Mm-hmm. They're seeing the value in buying a home, putting that money towards a mortgage for a long-term investment versus putting that money, towards a rental payment where you're paying someone else's mortgage. So I am seeing a lot of individuals who are buying at a younger age. Also, in the past, I think it was customary for maybe the lady to get married, then they buy their first home, right? Mm-hmm. But this day and age, women are running with things, men too. And, a lot of individuals are buying a home before they take those next steps with relationship changes. So they're buying at a much younger age, and that's so smart. That's really smart as far as spending their money that way.
Yeah, that's a really great point, and definitely have seen some of our friends do that as well. Hey, just because you're single doesn't mean you can't go ahead and buy your home, and a lot of us have taken that step. So I'm going to imagine, based on your answer of the the downtown conversation or the cool apartment angle, that this next one might be a myth as well, because there's this myth out there that walkability is like supreme. If you can't walk to the grocery store or daycare or work, etc., then a millennial is not going to be interested in the property. But I kind of view that as hand in hand with the first one. That's not really true, is it?
Yeah, I don't agree with that one. There was this new thing that came out. It's probably been about maybe 3 years or so ago, but it was all about the walkability. And there was this rating. So based on location
That's right.
and what is
Walkability
surrounding.
score, right? What is your score?
Yeah. There was this walkability. And at first when it came out, as a real estate professional, I was like, oh gosh, what does this mean? I didn't really understand this. And I have seen that no one cares about the walkability rating or score. Very seldom is it even mentioned on listings because most people or most buyers, when they're looking first of all to purchase a home, they do their own research. They know where they want to live. And so this random score rating really means nothing. I mean, it really doesn't. So going back though to the walkability, yes, are those conveniences nice to be able to walk to places just for, easy access and just to simplify life? Sure. But it's very, very seldom that I hear someone say, all right, I want to buy a home and I must be able to walk to this place, this place, and this place. If anything, it's actually more of maybe the baby boomers that I hear this from more than our millennials. I've hear I've we worked with many buyers where they no longer are able to drive, but they still are very active. So maybe their eyesight's bad, so they can't drive, but they are still very active and they love to get out there and go for walks. And it's very important to them to be able to walk to grocery stores or a convenience store or whatnot, based on where they plan on purchasing. So I wouldn't say that that's something that is a must for millennials. I would call that one a myth.
All right, so we're 2 myths down so far. Now, a little bit different direction here. Student debt is a huge conversation in our country, of course, and this is definitely one where millennials are impacted. Millennials have a lot of debt right now due to student loans, and many still trying to pay those off, or many millennials still just finishing things like grad school. I can raise my hand in terms of our family there. So there's this kind of feeling out there that, millennials are going to make up a big portion of the buyer pool, but student debt's really going to hold them back. They're not going to have enough saved to purchase a home. It's going to hurt them when it comes to getting mortgages. Do you see student debt and debt in general being a real big problem for millennials buying homes right now?
Once again, I would have to say that's a myth. That has not been our biggest hiccup when it comes to getting millennials pre-qualified. The biggest hiccup has been just the overall credit score. And so that's in line with, someone making late payments. That's been more of the hiccup versus just this large amount of debt. And there, of course, are so many different types of loans out there that even though maybe you don't have a lot of cash at hand, there's a lot of different options for 100% financing. So, I know many first-time home buyers are in the mindset that, I must have, 10%, 20% down payment in order to buy a home, or I can't do this altogether. And that's so untrue. Once again, there's, 100% financing with USDA areas, so underdeveloped areas. There's also 100% financing if you are a VA. There's 100% financing through many different credit, like state employees credit unions, different credit unions. They offer conventional 100% financing. So there's so many options where there is no money down. So do not let that hold you back. But yeah, I'm not seeing so much that the debt is the issue. More so it's the credit score. So be smart, pay your bills on time, because it can hurt you when it comes to qualifying for a home.
Very cool. Interesting to hear, again, boots on the ground experience, Angie. Now, you talk about different generations, and the baby boomers we know, very competitive, strong buying power from those folks. And there's another myth that says millennials can't compete with those older generations, and they're going to lose out on getting home. So even if, they're not just limiting themselves to the hip downtown apartments, and even if debt's not an issue, you still can't compete with the older generations, and that's going to cause problems for the generation.
So I would say this is my first reality. I would say that, and this is not, across the board, of course, but I am seeing the biggest, trouble or hurdle that we're running into as representing millennials is their buying power, per se. There are just certain areas and certain price points where a home goes on the market and there are multiple offers. And it can be super frustrating for our buyer and for us as well if our buyer does not have extra cash at hand to potentially go above asking price. Or maybe their loan is not as solid as someone when you're, competing against like those older generations. Because, of course, if we have the exact same offer and one, for example, maybe is an FHA 3.5% down, but the other loan is 20% down conventional, more than likely a seller will be more drawn to the conventional 20% down because it shows that that is more solid of a buyer. So yes, we are seeing that millennials are getting into kind of, competing with these older generations, and oftentimes older generations are winning out because, again, they have more cash at hand and they just have a stronger loan package.
It's really interesting, I think, to look at some of these things. So yeah, there you go. That one is a little bit more of a reality. All right, then there's this one last myth or reality I'll ask you out there. We talk about the uncertainty and the market in general, but also uncertainty in the real estate phase of things as well. And there is some thought that millennials are just sort of going to wait for a recession. Like prices have come up so much that millennials are like, let's keep renting for a little while. We'll wait for a recession, then we'll jump into the home buying game. Do you hear that feedback from folks?
I have heard that feedback from millennials and older generations. So I wouldn't say that's strictly a millennials that are having this feeling or mindset to wait for the recession. But guys, I want to remind you that we are talking about the triangle market here. And, typically there's this bell curve that every 7 or so years, there is a real estate recession. The recession is not happening. It is not. There is so many studies behind it that, well, first of all, the reason being that we're not going to see a strong housing recession is because we're in such a strong seller's market with such limited inventory. So although other areas might be affected by this so-called recession, in our area, there's no way for it just to plummet because we don't have the inventory. It'd be different if we had a 6-month supply of inventory, things start to, slow down, then it could be a big crash across the board. But we're not going to see that. Hopefully I'm not wrong there, but I'm almost certain we're not going to see a recession like we did, in the past. So don't wait around for that to happen.
Yeah. It was a different animal back in 2008. So that dramatic of a drawback, may not happen. And timing is a very difficult thing to do, timing these ups and downs because it's so unpredictable. So be careful there. That's really, really important. You've been listening to the Savvy Realtor Podcast. I'm Walter Storholt alongside Angie Cole. She's the owner and broker in charge of A. Cole Realty here in the Triangle. And if you have questions for Angie, we invite you to go online to acolerealty.com. Listen to past podcast episodes on the website, read the blog, and all the great information, including the option to find a home right there on the website. That's acolerealty.com. And you can also call Angie with your questions, 919-578-3128.